Goth as ever.
Good morning and welcome to If These Heels Could Talk. I'm JoyGenea with Solutions by JoyGenea.
And I'm Elvira. No, I mean, I'm Michelle with Bad Cat Digital. Welcome to If These Heels. And today we are talking about the thing that everybody's talking about. We're talking about quiet quitting.
Well, okay, yes, we want to explore that a little bit
Yeah,
further.
we want to explore a little bit.
Because we hear about this and then I have to say, it feels like a whole bunch of things got lumped into one. Like they reached out the world of marketing and news and so forth, reached into the universe. Well, how about a chunk of this?
Well, and you can understand, especially from marketing and PR perspective, how a phrase like quiet quitting takes off, because what a great phrase. It's alliterative. It starts with odd letters. It looks good when it's written out.
It scored you a lot of points in Scrabble.
It's easy to remember. So I get all of that. And also, let me just state, because both, as business owners, both JoyGenea and I think that we want to make sure that we're not unintentionally not supporting something that we want to support. So both of us support healthy boundaries in the workplace. It's incredibly important. The people who burn out the most are the ones who say yes the most. Those are the people you have to, as a leader, you have to be supportive of and provide resources for. And so nobody in this room is going to say that working with boundaries is a bad thing. It's incredibly good, and leadership is responsible for creating that culture and relationship. So,
and like almost all things, it gets down to communication.
Absolutely.
Healthy, appropriate boundaries is about conversations. Unhealthy boundaries is about lacks of conversations that have actions that have
and this is why I struggle with this phrase. Because I really understand work to rule as a labor action. I really understand, these kinds of things. One of the Wikipedia article on work to rule refers to it as malicious compliance. And I understand that and support that when you're in terrifying and terrible work. Absolutely. I get it. We're not here to have a labor dispute conversation.
Let's say this. Not all work environments are equal.
Right. Totally not.
Right. So it seemed what I noticed as we started to research this conversation is that there were about 5 different terms that people were using interchangeably.
Yeah.
The work to rule, the blue flu, the quiet.
The blue flu has got to be my favorite one. I like the blue flu. That's funny.
But they're not actually the same.
But they're not all the same
thing.
Their
intentions are different. The environments that they would be used in are different.
But I think what they all have in common is that they're all really emotionally triggering phrases.
Yes.
They're really emotionally charged. Maybe that's a better word. They're emotionally charged phrases.
Well, I think they're kind of emotionally driven too, though.
Yeah. And so they're intended to get a reaction. So, they're intended to get a response. They're clickbaity and intended to drive a conversation and drive a response. But that's the misnomer of quiet, right? It's a conflict. If you're feeling so used as an employee that your only choice is to maliciously comply to your job description as written and screw it, and Janice can deal with the kitchen break room next time, whatever it is, I'm not going to come in on Saturdays anymore, and I'm not going to work overnights anymore, and I'm going to stop answering texts and emails from my boss in the middle of the night. All of those kinds of things. I get it. But there's a conflict there that can only be resolved through communication.
Yes.
Quietly quitting does absolutely nothing to resolve the conflict. It just buys you time till you actually quit and or get fired.
And my yes and to it is also, and building on it, is the whole quiet quitting. Are you quitting? Are you just inflicting appropriate boundaries without any conversation?
And what does it do to the rest of your teammates?
End game.
Yeah.
And what is your, do you recognize how that plays out for the team? And if you're already out from the team, then be, it's definitely time to be considering different things.
Well, and that's my point. That's my point in not liking the phrase, is that it seems almost benign and cute when it's really a charged phrase. And I would actually say that employers engage in what I would call, and I think this is just as toxic,
Oh yeah.
engage in what I would call quiet firing. I've heard this from peers and acquaintances in business where they will create a scenario or a situation where they'll take away the tasks that an employee enjoys or finds challenge in and replace it with mundane tasks, or they'll take away some perk or some thing that only that employee really cares about.
If you look at the history of labor,
like the red stapler
right
in Office Space.
The history, I was so going to say Office Space.
Yeah.
The movie. But if you look at the history, though, of times when the labor forces needed to be cut back in particular areas and so forth, that's exactly what they do.
Right.
They remove a whole bunch of, so if you're in a position and all of a sudden all these benefits went away,
right,
all of a sudden that's leadership's way of saying we have way too many.
We have to cut back and we don't want to do layoffs. Right. So we're gonna cut this back and wait for everybody to quit.
So in case you didn't know,
hint. There's and that's the thing. Like, why don't we call that quiet firing? If we're gonna have if we're gonna set up this conflict and we're gonna talk about this conflict and we're gonna talk about how I think there are people out there who think it's an inherent conflict between employees and employers. And I don't think that's the case. I really don't. I don't think it has to be that way.
I don't think it has to be that way. There's another thing that kind of falls within this. I want to make sure it comes into the conversation, and that's minimal working. And that's an interesting thing too, where employees, because of remote working, we don't have management right there.
Right.
Supervising, which management should never have to supervise you about your job. I'm just saying they shouldn't.
Right.
Like that's already a bad demographic. But
right.
Anyways, there are, and it's interesting, but I'm hearing about it more in some different spaces in the coaching world about minimum working, where people work as hard as possible to look at how they can do the minimum amount of it.
Yeah.
And nobody notices. Like, what's the minimum amount I can do? And nobody even notices that I'm, barely there, not logged on. Like they test all the boundaries about how the business is paying attention to them remotely, and then figures out how to have a second job, how to be gone most of the time. Like, it's very interesting.
Wow.
The amount of energy and effort, but it is a thing, minimal working.
Well, and here's the thing. If you are one of the roughly third of employees right now in the United States who enjoy remote working and enjoy that flexibility, enjoy those options, this should terrify you.
Because this is going to make
that's going to take it away.
Yes. This
mindset is going to require that businesses eventually bring everybody back to the office and require people to come back.
Or cameras are on all the time.
Or really invasive, really like boundary, really icky, gross, kind of horrible monitoring techniques are set up.
So if you think what I've noticed is if you think a fellow employee might be participating in something like this, it is, I hate to say it, it's in your best interest to educate your leadership, the people above you, and to just recognize there's going to be 10%. And
it's also in your best interest. It's also in your best interest to point it out to that teammate and say, dude, what are you doing? Like, why are you trying to make me look bad?
Like, it's obvious we're all picking up the slack.
Yeah. Why are you trying to make me look bad? Yeah, you're not on the Slack channel. You're not doing this. You're not doing that. Come on, man.
Yeah.
Like, you can deal with it on a coworker level. And this is my point. When we have when we have cultures in our workplaces where everybody's kind of rowing in the same direction, when everybody understands where you're going and wants to get there together, then everybody gets to also be in this mutually supportive environment. There's this fantastic, we'll have to find it and link it in the description. There's a fantastic TED Talk from the HR director of a former HR person from Netflix. And she says something that I remember all the time. I remember it while we're writing employee handbooks. I remember it whenever we have conversations about policies. It is that the vast majority of employees, of everybody that works, are adults who are conscientious and want to do their best job.
Yes.
And so if we write if we write policies to the lowest common denominator, if we write policies to that 10% instead of the 90, then we're treating the 90% like they're toddlers who can't tie their shoes.
Yes.
And that is not a healthy workplace.
Nope. And people feel it. Like they can
Right.
feel it the second they get hired by you that, wow, okay, great.
Yeah.
You had some done.
Yeah.
And
So now
everything's
mommy
written.
wants to feed me Jell-O for lunch.
Right. It's
Right.
like, no.
That makes no sense. Why did I say that? That makes no sense. I'm trying to like make it like a hospital thing, like don't have teeth. Like I'm just trying to, okay, anyway,
trying to lighten it.
moving on.
Well, and I do understand. I understand where employees could be coming to this.
Oh my gosh, I would be doing the same thing.
emotionally.
Look, I would be doing exactly the same thing. If I were at the job I had before I started Bad Cat,
Yes. Yeah.
this is what I would be doing right now. And frankly, I probably would have been part of the Great Resignation.
Yeah.
And you know what? During that time when so many people were shifting their jobs,
Mhm.
so many people were kind of evaluating their lives and shifting their jobs, Bad Cat lost employees.
Yeah,
I'm not going to
totally.
be here saying that this is like the perfect mecca for
No.
everybody, because it's not.
It's not.
I believe, and I'm
Yeah.
sure that those individuals would maybe describe it differently, but I believe that the business outgrew them
Mhm.
and they weren't interested in what it had become. And
Well, it's
and there's
shifted.
nothing wrong with that.
It's like
just
an outfit.
Yeah.
It's shifted.
Yeah.
Like the clothing didn't fit the same.
the
anymore.
relationship doesn't serve everybody in the relationship anymore. It's time to go. Somebody needs to call it. And that is why I have such a hard time
Well,
with this concept of quietly doing anything.
okay, so this is interesting. I'm building on this. As you say that, those that had, I think it's different personality types too. Certain personalities would do the Great Resignation and have the courage and take actions and so forth. Those that aren't built like that, that's not their personality type,
Mhm.
stayed, endured the pandemic, endured probably a lot of above and beyond, a lot of shift and that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
And so a more passive aggressive approach would be their style. And now it has been a year or two. And it kind of makes sense that we this dichotomy.
And I do
is
think
coming.
people,
This is the next layer.
I do think there are some people that have a more passive aggressive approach. And I also think there are some people who simply don't have choices. There are some people for whom, their resources don't extend to having the choice. It's not easy for them to get a job. It's hard for them to, they might be paid more than they think they can get elsewhere. Health benefits are always a thing that keep people's
schedules within the family.
Yeah, all of those things keep people in a job that they might not want to stay in anymore.
Yes, which
causes all of this.
Feeling like there are unhealthy boundaries and like you're being taken advantage of. What I noticed out of all of this, if we're even talking about but it's feeling like you're being taken advantage of.
Well, it's and the resentment that grows from that. And we have a podcast that we did, a year or two ago called about invisible work, invisible labor. And I think about it like whoever in your office plans the parties, whoever in your office cleans out the fridge in the break room, whoever in your office restocks the paper towels in the bathroom when they're empty, that person is the person that as a teammate, you need to watch out for burnout for. And as a leader, you need to watch out for burnout for, because that person, that's a recipe for resentment.
Yeah.
Because it's doing work that everybody appreciates.
It
has to get done. Nobody really sees it happen, because literally nobody sees it happen. Because if they did, they would help, because that's what shame does to us. But that person then often feels invisible in that work, and like they're contributing more than their coworkers to the shared space. They're contributing more to the collaboration. They're giving disproportionately for what they get. And often all they want to get is a thank you and an appreciation. Often all they want to get is to not have to do it as frequently, because
they would like other people to notice it
too, and take their junky stuff out of the fridge for them.
Empty the garbage when
it's overflowing.
The toilet roll paper when it's empty.
And you know what? Nobody's going to be mad if you change the toilet roll when there's only like 5 sheets left on it. Nobody's gonna care. This isn't your house. It's not about waste. Believe me, the amount of money that we spend on toilet paper for 13 people in a month astonishes me. Like, it never occurred to me to have a line item for toilet paper and paper towels, but it's like $500 a month for toilet paper and paper
I suppose
towels.
because of the pandemic, there was a gap, and you had some time off, and then all of a sudden you were able to.
And then all of a sudden we come back and we have 2 bathrooms instead of 1, and we have more people. And when you add more people, you add more operational costs.
Yep.
And I understand that from a desk and a thing, but like your brain doesn't extend to toilet paper.
Hand towels. You're right. That's funny.
Like it's crazy. Anyway, moving on. So the point is though, that this conflict, it's like we've all maybe this is my real problem with the phrase.
Yes.
It's like we all just accept the conflict as inherent. And I really think that it doesn't have to be a conflict. I really think that if you have, the kind of leadership that you want to have, talking to them about how you're feeling, talking to them about what it is that where you're challenged at, talking to them about what you need. Sometimes we can't always give people more money, or we can't give people all the obvious things, but we can definitely set up a rotation to restock the bathroom paper.
Right. Yes.
So there are things that we can do. And if we wait until we have to be quiet about it or we'll explode, then I don't know that's the environment's problem. Mm-hmm. I think that if we wait that long, that becomes a me thing. If I wait that long, that's a me thing.
Yes.
And so,
and if the environment that you're in,
mm-hmm.
from a leadership perspective, if I have an employee that I don't feel comfortable to have to have some conversations about the fact that I'm sensing that they're feeling trapped.
Right.
Or something is out of alignment for them
right.
that we have not communicated, that I have totally missed. There might be something in this moment that I have totally missed, but has transpired between us, and I would like to clean it up. If we aren't able to have those conversations, I need to check myself from a leadership perspective and say, is this the right person in this spot?
Yep.
And then on my bus, because that creates it fosters for
is there a different bus? Is there a better bus?
Right.
How do we work together to get them in the right seat or to remake the seat for them?
Right.
Like that's the conversation. And I just will not accept that there's nothing we can do about this conflict. I will not accept that.
And from an employee perspective, if they don't feel like they can, if they've at least tried, I guess this is my encouragement. If you are in a situation like that, at least try to have 1 or 2 conversations about that. But if by the 3rd conversation, you feel confident that you've clearly spoken and stated the issue, and leadership has heard you and then done nothing.
Okay, fine.
Got it. Like, you're right. You
fine.
need to make a new choice. You need to find a company that can hear you. You need to find leaders that understand you.
And for the best conversations where people can hear you, come with solutions, not just problems.
Oh, absolutely.
Come with potential solutions, and try to be open to solutions that don't require additional budgeting. Especially for small businesses. Look, I'm not going to lie. Like the things that I have to say no to, are all about money.
You're right.
The things that and I don't want to say no.
Right.
And there are days when I feel just so like a bad provider.
Yeah.
By having to say no over and over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
And it just piles, right? Especially if it's a group. Like one person will say, we need this. Oh, and we can't forget. Oh, and we can't forget that. Oh. Like I remember I had a conversation about putting up a shelf. And I said, are there any other spaces that aren't working for us? Oh. And there was one space that we were talking about, and there was a bunch of ideas about that space. And I was like, okay, we can come up with something here that isn't going to be, outside of what we can do. And then it was like, oh, and don't forget this. Oh, and can't we get that? And oh, and can't we have this? And what about that? And what about that? And it's like, oh my gosh, guys, one at a time. And I asked the question. So I opened the door. So I don't get to have an emotional response in the moment. But I wanted to have one. Be like, what the hell? What's going on? What do you think?
Pause. It was a
time out. One at a time. We had a productive conversation about the next thing, and now we can be done.
Yep. It's like
until the next one. Yeah. So it just, again, it's not required, but part of strong communication is that it works in two directions.
Mm-hmm.
And so to get more of what you want out of somebody, coming to them with ideas of what that is rather than only complaints of what it shouldn't be is just how to win friends and influence people.
Absolutely. And it goes both ways. I've
Yeah,
seen managers
absolutely.
come at employees and be like, you can't keep doing these. And I'm like,
Right.
did you give them any alternatives? Did you
Yeah.
help them figure out why they're doing it that way?
Did you ask if they needed different tools so they could do it a different way?
Or did you just say stop? And
Yeah.
it's like, ugh. So it is. And we're at that place. I would just tell you, this is a conversation and a buzz phrase that's catching on because this is definitely a space and stuff.
There is a lot of strong feelings to it.
Yes, there's a lot, and it's very real and it's very present right now.
Yep.
And so if you're in leadership and you think this isn't happening within your organization, you're lying to yourself.
Yep.
I'll tell you that. And if you are an employee and you're thinking about or doing some of these things, recognize you aren't totally alone, but this isn't the healthiest building block, I would say, because it's a breakdown in communication. That's how I see all of it. Malicious compliance, quiet quitting, all of it is a breakdown in communication, and nobody wins in that. That just continues to grow. So I just strongly encourage finding ways to have the communication about what is needed for people to be balanced, and then choices can be made from there. But at least people are clear,
absolutely,
about what's possible. Because nobody should have to. I don't want
a boundary isn't a boundary if you're not communicating it.
Yeah, what is it then? I'm just curious.
Okay, let's say it like this: I cannot expect somebody to honor my boundaries if they don't know what they are.
Yes, exactly. Well,
so maybe it becomes a wall, maybe it becomes a barrier, maybe it becomes something else, but it's certainly not a healthy boundary if I can't communicate it to them.
Perfect communication. That's what we're saying today.
Yep. Thank you so much for listening to If These Heels Could Talk. I'm Michelle. This is JoyGenea. Follow us, listen to us, do all of the things with the buttons. Thank you.
Yeah.
Have a great week.